This is the Stop Time Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Hopkins, and I'm here to engage you in thought-provoking, motivational conversations around practicing the art of living in the moment. I'm a certified life coach, and I'm excited to dig deep and offer insights into embracing who we are and where we are at. So my next guest is an actress who has worked on stage with some of the world's most prestigious theaters, including the Royal Shakespeare Company, Shakespeare's Globe, and the National Theatre. She is a Drama Centre London graduate whose training was supported through many awards in the support of actors, including Jeremy Irons, Ian McKellen, and Ian McShane. Upon graduation, she landed a role in BBC's long-running series, Doctors. Film and television credits include the animated series Summer Lane Drive, the features Psycho Gorman, and the limited Channel 4 series Deceit. She recently finished shooting for an upcoming Amazon series Three Pines based on Louise Penny's Gamache series, where she is a series regular. Born in Manchester to Irish and Austrian ancestry, Anna speaks fluent German. Off-screen, she plays roller derby and converted a dilapidated, narrow boat into a home. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Anna Tierney. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. First of all, I'm so curious to know about the dilapidated boat you turned into a home.
Well, I mean, it's probably my all-time favorite place that I ever lived, and first home that I owned, the only home that I've ever owned, and it was a really special time. You know, living in London, it's difficult to afford a place of your own. So me and my partner, we bought an old narrowboat, and then just snazzed her up, and she was called the Looking Glass, and she now belongs to someone else. We don't have her anymore, but it was one of the most beautiful times living in London, but in the most amazing parts of the city, but always on the water and always near some green or a park. And you know, the canals are like this sort of secret part of the city that you don't always notice straight away, but yeah, it's pretty magical. I really loved it.
How fabulous. How long did you live there?
We had the boat for 4 years, so on and off for around that time.
What was going on for you in your life then? Like, what did your life look like?
I mean, it was a mixture of, I think I was working on various different theatre shows then. I mean, I was still skating then, so I was playing roller derby, and at one point I was making a show about roller derby. So there was a lot of skating, I think, at that point in my life. Just being a working actor and living on a boat.
It conjures up all sorts of wonderful romantic ideas of being an actor in London, right? I mean, well, I love that you included it in your bio too. It says a lot about you that you included it in your bio, actually.
Well, my agent likes that little tidbit.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, well, what, you know, it's I guess it is an interesting fact. I always just thought it was my way of life, but I think, like you said, it probably does say a lot about a person that, you know, they're willing to live on the water and live in this kind of wandering way, and it's romantic. It does. I guess it says a lot in that just one kind of snapshot image, and you can imagine a lot in that image. But yeah, it was my life, big part of my life.
I love it. You're talking about, you know, Jeremy Irons and the Old Globe and the Royal Shakespeare, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, you know, she plays roller derby and converted to dilapidated boat. I'm like, that is awesome. Like, it's like the full embracing of, you know, what you do and who you are. And they were given equal value. If not, I mean, usually the bio is left with, you know, your sort of biggest credit at the end or whatever. And I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, thanks.
I love that. Take us back a little bit, because I don't know really much about you, and I'd love it if you wouldn't mind taking us back a little bit to your origin story, like to little Anna back in England, right? Were you born there?
Yeah. I was born in Manchester. My dad's Mancunian and my mum's Austrian. And so I was born in the north of England and then moved to London, to an area called Northolt. but I don't have like a Norfolk accent. That's kind of like what they sound like where I grew up. And then grew up there. And my dad was an actor. He passed away 8 years ago, this month actually. And so I think that was always sort of there in our world. And my mum is an artist and a painter and many different mediums, and so we've all kind of been very artistic in lots of different ways, I think, growing up. But somehow acting, and I think writing, as a kid growing up and now, has always been a big part of my life.
Do you sort of have a recollection of when you started getting interested yourself or thinking yourself, we often look at our parents, don't we, and think, oh, that's cool, or we admire them. I'm just curious to know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, my dad he was such a charming, funny, dedicated, personable man. He was one of those people that it was just a dream to be around. He could hold court in a room, and you'd be kind of hanging off every word. And he was hilariously funny, like piss your pants funny. He was just the best. And those people are really rare. So I think, having someone like that who you can kind of look up to, and probably as a kid you sort of emulate and replicate things that your parents do, or you have that example, so you know how far you can go. I think about that a lot. It must have played a role, but I think you have to have some kind of aptitude for it. Like, my sister isn't an actor, and she just, I guess, doesn't have like the same aptitude for it, but she's very artistic, and she makes jewelry and she paints, and we all kind of do a bit of all of that, but like, there's a reason why she's gone down that path and I've gone down this one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, it's so
Yeah.
interesting because I think, sometimes artistic parents, really don't want their kids, they say do anything but, and they sort of discourage them from the arts. And others, expect it. I mean, there's so many different sort of trajectories or expectations or non-expectations. And I'm just so curious to know, was your household, did it feel sort of, did you feel at choice, or how did that sort of, what was the rhythm of your life growing up?
Well, I mean, there were definitely, when I decided that's what I wanted to do, my dad definitely, I don't think he was encouraging of it, because he knew how hard it could be, obviously. But it's sort of problematic, I think, when parents sort of discourage you to do something, because it just makes you want to do it more. You want to like either prove your parent wrong, or you think like, why don't they want me to do it? Do they not think I'm good at that thing? Or, it creates so much more of a kind of story around the thing that just, gets in the way, I think. But my mum was always supportive of anything that I wanted to do, which I'm very grateful for. And they were both supportive at every step.
Do you remember your first performance? Like, do you remember, how old were you, would you say, when you did your first acting?
I did Bugsy Malone, and because I wasn't a confident singer then, and so I had a very small role. I was Luella. I remember my dad coming to watch that night, and I forgot one of my two lines. It was just so painful. And I think it was so painful that I forgot to go out for the curtain call. I forgot to bow, and my parents had said, where we didn't see you. Where were you? I said, oh, I was out there. And just sort of lied. I made up this lie, but I was just like in pain backstage that I'd forgotten this one line. And I think I remember being really method about the show too. Like, I was like knitting in the show, and that's clearly why I forgot my line, like just trying to do it all right but getting it all wrong.
Oh my God.
It's so weird being a kid, isn't it?
You said that, you were being method, right? So it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that you were so involved in the act of what you were doing, that you actually forgot the context of which, but actually you have to remember lines and remember your blocking and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, and I think it was totally out of context. Like, there's no reason why this character would have needed to be knitting, but I'd made a choice, I guess. um, but just unnecessary.
So high school, high school finished, and you did, I'm guessing you did really well. And the reason I say that is because in my research also, I know that you're fluent in German, and
Hmm.
that you received a scholarship to Oxford. Is that right? For language?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I did not bad at high school. Actually, I had kind of average grades, and then when I went to sixth form and I did my A levels, and I was doing subjects that I liked, I started to do better. But you know, it's funny. I don't really talk a lot about Oxford and my time there. I kind of always felt a bit like an outsider because I grew up in a part of London where it wasn't the expectation that you got into that kind of university. And I always felt like I was climbing a very big hill while I was there. And I think then I also had this feeling like when I came out of Oxford that people who knew me or where I grew up that they would somehow look at me differently or think like, that you sort of somehow think you're better than other people. And I honestly never really felt like I belonged there. But I know it was very useful in so many ways, like that kind of university training. You read so much, you're so well read, and you have exposure to a lot of plays and literature that you maybe wouldn't take the time to get into if you didn't have that kind of degree.
Yeah.
And then I also spent a year abroad in Berlin, which was really formative for me. And you know I was applying for drama schools when I was at
Oh.
university, and so went straight to drama school. And it wasn't until I got there that I realized that that was where I was supposed to be. And I'd
Mm.
kind of, I think, been putting it off to an extent. Was maybe a bit afraid of going to drama school, or would I be good enough to go there, or all those self
Mm.
doubts that you have and things.
Yeah. That distinction is brilliant because if I heard you correctly, you went from high school to university, not to theater school, right? So you
Yeah,
apply,
yeah.
yeah. So I'm sure you were well aware that going to Oxford would bring these things for a girl of your class or stature, wherever you were coming from, to go to Oxford. So it was probably, obviously it's difficult to get in. You got in, so there was
Mm.
an element of proof there somewhere that must have been important to you,
Hmm.
right? But then I also heard you say, which is really, really interesting, that there was maybe an element of not being ready yet to apply to theater school, or even if you were maybe strong enough. So it seemed like a good option, right? Talk to me a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that yeah, studying a degree first so that it's like a backup, or I'm not even sure. Yeah, I think I thought it would be sensible to do, and maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And then when you get into a university like that, you sort of think, well, I have to go. And I remember arriving there and feeling so out of my depth, but just kept going and kept trying to sort of prove to myself that I could do it. And maybe that sort of forged a quality in me where, you just keep going until you get there. And those are useful qualities, I think, when as an actor too. You can feel very out of your depth, and you you just have to keep going and keep getting better at it, and um you know fight those voices that are telling you you don't belong in that place.
Yeah, it's a great catch that if nothing else, you learned a lot, obviously, but if nothing else, you also learned a very important tool for this industry, right? For the industry that
Mm.
you're in, the resilience and the, not always being in the zone or in the, yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes perfect sense.
I think also, we're sort of told that those are like the pinnacle places that you should be going to, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I think that's really wrong.
Yeah.
Because I think it can lead you, or definitely for me, because I think I'm a little bit of a kind of adaptive personality. So I think, oh, that's the thing that I have to do, and I'll adapt myself in a way to fit into those environments. And actually, if I just embraced like where I came from, and didn't feel the need to sort of prove so many things, I think our society now in our industry is much more accepting of difference, and definitely more accepting of working class actors. And but in my dad's generation, and maybe I was sort of following a similar example, like he grew up in Manchester but completely eradicated his accent. He
Mm.
sounded very posh, and that was the trend then, to sound what's called RP. I think you call it the same thing, don't you? Received pronunciation. You
Mm.
sound a certain way to be accepted into theatre and television. And now we're seeing that, all accents are embraced, like regional accents. Or even like if you have a lisp, it's fine. Like, but I think back then it was like, no, you have to speak properly, and you have to do things a certain way. And I remember my dad commenting on certain like speech things when I was a kid. And I just think you should just be allowed to embrace all those things, because that's what makes it interesting. And um yeah, I wish I had trusted that a little bit more. But I think, the example in the industry up until very recently was, you want to look like this kind of homogenous sort of gravy of bland things, or
Mhm.
perfection or whatever that is. But I'm glad that's changing now, and I'm embracing all those rougher edges.
Mm. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. What makes you different, right, is now what's interesting. That's the
Mm.
sort of new, the new thing, right? Is hence the let's talk about the boat at the end of your bio, right? I mean, there was a time when that would not have been a thing, right? It's
Oh
like
yeah, they would have just thought you were some strange homeless person.
exactly, exactly. They would have put you right in a box. What discoveries have you made about yourself since the world changed so much in 2020?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I've discovered that slowing down and taking time with things often yields better results. Certainly with the way that things move online with social media and everything, like the pace is just relentless, and it's not really doable in a lot of ways. And I think now I'm starting to enjoy again that kind of, the long periods of gestation where you're thinking about a project, knowing that something can take a really long time before it's ready to be shown to the world. But it's really difficult with the way that things, I think, are marketed online. You're made to feel like you need to share things so much quicker, and it's just not really conducive for good work, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a nice thing to realize.
Do you think that things actually changed, or do you think just your perception changed? I mean, things have changed, obviously, there's external things, but it's interesting,
Yeah,
right? I mean, it's the same business, it's the same. The internet certainly was going full strong, and there just wasn't much actually going on.
yeah. Have things actually changed? I mean, probably not. Will they ever change? No, I think they'll probably get more and more intense as things go along. You know, it will just be a different kind of content,
Mm.
but it will be coming out just as thick and fast. Yeah, there's a new thing every second, every minute of the day. You're never going to be relevant. And if you are relevant for a moment, then trust me, everyone's forgotten by the next day.
Yeah.
You can't possibly keep up with that stuff. I think there's this confusion about the more visible I am, somehow the more worth it I am,
Mm.
or the more merit I have. And that's just not true. That just means there's more pictures of you online. There's more of a kind of trace of your sort of online journey. But
Mm.
it's definitely something I struggle with. The sort of relentlessness of social media and news via social media. I mean, it feels like I'm surfing this sort of information wave, but I'm just on the surface, and it's very hard to go deep. And I think that's something I would like to try and harness a little more, is to stay more deeply in my thoughts and my connections and physical connections with people, and it exists further away from that online place.
Mm. Yeah, no, I hear you.
I find it really confusing too, because like I said earlier, I think I'm a little bit too adaptive to things. So I'll go online and because I am artistic and I like to draw, and I follow all these illustrators and things, or I could see anything and I'll just think, oh, well, I should do that. Maybe I should be doing that, and I should do an illustration and post it's like I'm making up all these tasks for myself that just don't need to be in my handbag.
I really like to sort of delineate the big difference between should and could, right? I always
Mm-hmm.
define should as could with shame. So
Uh-huh.
when I heard you say that, when I heard you first say that, I saw some art and I really liked it. Energetically, you looked like, I'm a good artist. Like, it was very positive. It wasn't like, oh, I
Yeah.
should do that because I can do that. What I heard from you, and maybe I'm wrong, but what I was hearing was,
Yeah.
oh, I can do that too. That might be fun. I mean, I actually heard an element of fun, but then I heard the
Yeah.
sort of sensible you go, what am I thinking? If I do that, then I won't be able to do this, which is where I'm trying to focus there. Is it's almost a paralysis by analysis at the end of the day, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, there's just so many options, but the thing is, there are so many options. You just don't have to share them all online.
Yeah.
You can do all those. You actually can do all those things for fun, and not make a living out of them.
Yes.
Like, we don't live in the age where, Jefferson, who had, like, all those people had a million different jobs
Yeah.
and qualifications, that they were architects and philosophers and politicians, and they kind of did everything. And I think it is good to do many different things, but you just don't have to worry about sharing all of it online.
Yeah. You
I
don't have
think,
to be reporting it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I think another thing about slowing down during the pandemic too was, I think before I was very concerned or consumed with thinking, well, what makes the most sense as an actor? What should I do to kind of further, where I'm going with things, instead of thinking about what do I actually want to do and what do I enjoy, that like should versus could thing that you were just talking about. And I think that's so true. And it only just in recent months been actually realizing what I genuinely enjoy, and just taking the pedal off doing things for the sake of thinking I should do them for my career, or whatever it is. And that feels really, really wonderful.
Mm,
Mm.
I love that. Yeah. It's the slowing down to speed up.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a good boat term actually when we first had the narrow boat, where this much more experienced boater told us this boat term, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Mm,
So the slower you go, the easier it is to pull into, a lock, and you're less likely to capsize your boat or whatever it is,
mm,
and you'll get along quicker in the end. Yeah,
yeah.
always remember that. Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, what's your definition of living in the moment?
I think this year I've been thinking a lot more about surrendering to the moment and not controlling the moment so much. I think I didn't realize it, but I was a bit of a controller before.
Mm. How did you
You know,
discover? How did you discover that you were a controller?
well, going back home for Christmas, and when you get into that family dynamic and everyone's sort of jumping on each other's toes, and your own personality is sort of amped up, I think, when you're with family. And then I just realized that when I took my foot off the pedal and was just trying less to control like what my mom or my sister were doing, things ran smoother. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe they're not the problem. You always think, God, my family's so hard to deal with. But, maybe it's you. I think most of the time everyone can just let go a bit more, and things definitely run smoother. So I've been trying to kind of implement that a little bit more.
I love that. And what about in your regular day life? Is living in the moment important to you? Is that something that, what does that look like for you? Is that even something that you're interested in?
Yeah, I mean, what is that? Like, there's living in the moment, and then in my head, I'm like, okay, but then there's living in the moment successfully. Like, how do I
Mm.
do that at the optimum level? And I think, I don't know, as actors, there's a lot of time where you're like, am I using my time optimally? What does that mean? I was actually listening to one of your other podcast guests, with Rodney Hicks, and he said something about when he wakes up in the morning and he says two words. He says, "Thank you."
Mm-hmm.
And there's part of me that sort of can sometimes cringe at, like, like gratefulness, and even though I do a lot of those like gratitude things,
Mm.
and I thought, okay, sure. But then I woke up this morning and I was kind of feeling like all those usual aches and pains, and you're like, oh, the day. And then I was like, thank you. I just thought those two words popped into my head that he'd said, and I did instantly feel better. I was like, yeah, I I am grateful. Why wouldn't I be grateful for
Mm.
this life? And it's something about, there's like a little bit of forward energy. Like, how do you generate like a happy forward energy for yourself? And those little moments of gratitude, I think, just give yourself a little bit of dynamism in the morning that you need, I think. And the other day, for example, I got it with like physical activity. So there's a ton of snow here in Toronto, and I was shoveling away for a good hour and I was sweating, and I felt amazing afterwards. Like, I felt so good in my body. I felt useful, and I was ready to like dive into work. And I thought that's really interesting. How do you create that kind of physical, emotional high, at the beginning of your day? It's not always the easiest thing to do. How to live in the moment when you first wake up and you're sort of not sure what's going to happen, and how do you keep that going throughout the day? Yeah, it's tricky. I think there's a million different ways of doing it, isn't there? I don't think there's one way of living in the moment.
Well, it's funny because from my point of view, every moment is a moment, and we do live in every moment. We're just not aware of it.
Mm,
So the distinction for me is that, those moments like when you were shoveling the snow, you weren't thinking, I've got to shovel the snow so that I can get back to work. You were
mm,
shoveling the snow. The snow was always
mm,
there. It's the attitude to what you're doing, right? The awareness around what you're doing without attachment. So if you make the in the moment conditional to, I'll live in the moment if it'll make me feel better or get through the day, like just as you said with the gratitude thing, right? Like, it's like, yeah,
hmm.
gratitude. And then you might, all right, whatever, skeptically, thank you. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
but it's interesting, right?
Yeah, no, just hearing you talk about that, like, yes, shoveling snow is actually, there's certain activities that where you're just focused on the task too. I mean, those ones you really are sort of, never thought I'd say I'm living in the moment when I'm shoveling snow. But like, but you're very much in the moment. And I would say I'd experienced that playing roller derby, because it's
Mm.
such an intense physical sport.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that you can focus on is, well, being safe on skates, but like doing that intense
Yeah.
physical action in the moment and just focusing on that task. It does feel amazing to do those things. And I just recently started pottery and tap dancing as well. I've taken up
Yes.
a lot of hobbies. But yeah, you really have to be in the moment. And I don't know if it's like a meditative thing or not, or whether it's just nice to shut your brain up sometimes, isn't it? I think it's
Yeah.
important to turn it off.
No, absolutely. I saw something. I know you're not a big social media gal, but nevertheless, I did see something, and I'm not sure if you wrote it or not. I think you might have on your Instagram.
Hmm.
Can I share it? You said, I am fancy, I am fleeting, I am edges gently meeting.
Yeah, I did write that. Yeah. Oh, that's it's I'm glad that stood out. I mean, when you write something in your bio on Instagram, you think, "Oh God, what I hope people don't take this seriously." But I put that up there. I love to write, and I love to write poetry, and I was just thinking the other day, because I've been thinking a lot about identity and gender and how we kind of define ourselves. That's something I've been thinking a lot about recently. And I was thinking, like, what are all the different ways that I can describe myself that don't really categorize into boxes and things like that? And I guess I was thinking about um, all the different sides of myself, and a way of describing myself that wasn't just I don't know, putting myself in a box, I guess. But then I also thought, well, I am fancy, I am fleeting, I am edges gently meeting. That almost edges gently meeting, like I thought this could almost describe the way an Instagram grid looks like. I was like, oh, that's horrific. If Instagram wanted to like describe itself in poem form, I am edges gently meeting, like the squares of an I was like, oh God, I hope no one thinks it's that. Anyway, yeah, it's just a bit of fun. I think with social media, I'm sort of really trying to figure out how do I how do I want to share myself with total strangers, you know? So I'm really thinking about how to use it in a way that's healthy and fun. Um, but yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah. Well, I thank you and honor you for that because I thought that was beautiful. What do you mean by I am edges gently meeting?
Um, I suppose the hard and soft parts of yourself, of your personality, or of your physical being.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I was trying to think of all the different parts that could comprise me.
it's cool. Sorry, I'm totally riffing off that. When I think about
No,
edges gently meeting, I think of
yeah.
that. Let me ask you this crazy question.
Hmm.
If you were a Venn diagram,
Oh, yeah,
the two circles,
with the
with one in the middle,
circles.
yeah.
Yeah.
What what is the golden section there in the middle of you that is both of those sides? So not the two edges just meeting, but rather where's the crossover, which I think is the beautiful sort of blend of all of
Mm.
Anna.
Yeah, I think I'm only very recently discovering what that middle part is. I
Mm,
think, like we talked about earlier, I think for a long time I thought I had to be a certain way. And like I have curly hair, for example, and for the longest time for auditions, I would blow dry my hair, straighten it, um, think that I had to look a certain way. And it, it's sort of these weird things that you do to sort of deny parts of yourself. So I think I'm trying to judge less. Okay, what's the middle of the Venn diagram? Um, I think it's that peaceful place in the middle where you're not judging yourself, and you're not putting any pressure on yourself to perform a version of yourself for others. That's sort of the middle, isn't it?
because when you talked about, oh my God, I hope it doesn't look like an Instagram grid when I pulled up that the poem that you wrote, right? That's interesting. That
Mm.
fear right there, that fear of I hope it's not is really interesting. And then now when we're
Mm.
talking about the Venn, you're able to access probably what that field would feel like, but it's conjuring up for me that currently, even though it's a place you can go to, it's not a place that you can come from. So it's really a safe place. Again, this is all
Mm.
conjecture. I don't know if this is true, but this is just what's coming up for me.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine the Venn diagram with the outside circles as the wings of a butterfly and the crossover place as the core, as cocoon. Interestingly enough, that is where the cocoon begins. But the wings are what makes it fly, right?
I love that. No, and actually, the sort of winged image does resonate. That kind of angel winged figure is probably like one of those archetypal figures, is one of those kind of protective figures, but they're also quite worldly wise, aren't they? They've lived for centuries and they know how to live in the middle, and also, like you said, those winged parts of yourself, the other parts that you use to sort of be in the world. They're not bad parts, they're just other parts, and when you can see them for the whole, for what they are, they can be kind of magical, you know. That's really interesting that, yeah, you see it like a butterfly, because that's an image that's definitely come up for me.
Yeah. And I mean, I see you as the butterfly. It's interesting because when you talk about the angel, we think about, it sounded even like, even when you were saying it, maybe I heard you wrong, but there's a tendency to think of the angel as something that maybe comes to us, that we relate to. Whereas what I'm proposing is that you are the butterfly, and that you can use your cocoon to keep yourself safe, or to visit when you want to retreat, or you can recognize that from that cocoon is where your wings grow, and that when you fly, you take all of you with you.
Absolutely. And that requires a certain amount of self-awareness and surrender at the same, and I guess living in the moment, you know, but yeah, how to sort of hold yourself energetically with all those parts. It requires, yeah, a certain amount of thought and consideration. This is why I think social media and online stuff is just such a distraction from being energetically in yourself, really, in the day to day. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. If you were to call me 5 years from now and you were to say to me, Lisa, since we spoke, my whole life has transformed, what would you be telling me?
Well, I had thought about this recently.
You know what? I'm going to stop you for 1 second.
Yeah.
Embody it and tell me. Make this an acting exercise. So, hey, Lisa, I haven't spoken to you in however long. Oh my God, my life has changed. This is what's happening, and tell me in real time.
Oh, okay. I've had an amazing 5 years. It's been busy, but also there have been so many brilliant life moments where I've been able to explore the world and take some holidays. And I've been working on some projects that have been very dear to me for a long time. And we made them, and I worked with some really incredible creative teams in a way that I didn't think would be possible. And here we are. They've won some awards. You know, there's been the Oscar. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think I've achieved some personal project goals these last 5 years that have been very satisfying, and you know, flexed my muscles in ways that I didn't foresee.
That was beautiful. What did you notice?
What did I notice? It's really fun to think about things in that way. Yeah.
You completely lit up until you got to the Oscar thing, and then Brain came in.
Oh yeah.
And said, "Oh no, don't be so big."
Well, I just don't know if it's going to happen in the next 5 years. I think that will be 10
Well,
years.
if you don't believe in the possibility that it could happen, then it probably won't.
That's very true. That's very true.
If
It's funny how we shoot ourselves down.
Yeah, like living into your limitation. You know, literally. I mean, it's living a default future is what I call it, instead of a created life. Let's say you have all the material things that you ever needed, all the creature comforts, all of that, and then I come to you and say, you could have anything you want that money can't buy. What would you want?
What if I? God, why are these questions so hard? Um, Connection, just connection with people. I think,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's the thing I crave the most now, and I definitely don't want to decrease with time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah.
That's brilliant because you were pretty, as hard as it felt, you were pretty pretty quick to draw out one of your biggest values, which is connection.
Definitely.
How, Anna, how do you want to be remembered?
With love and fondness.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What's something that you don't want people to know about you?
Hmm. That's a funny one, isn't it? I think often I don't want people to know how playful I am. I think sometimes I get the impression that in the industry that it's a weakness to show too many sides of yourself, you
Mm.
know. But actually, I think it's probably the thing that I want to lean into the most is being playful and being silly, especially with other actors and other creative people. But there's a sort of, yeah, I think you can often think, well, I should better present my best. Again, it's this thing of presenting your best self, which it just doesn't exist, does it? You know, that's some kind of sleek version of yourself that's really put together. But actually, the interesting part is the sort of unpolished inner. I don't want people to see my unpolished side. Oh God, I'm a perfectionist. This is terrible. I'm finding all these terrible things out. Yeah,
So often our strengths are hidden in our weaknesses and vice versa.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there's a cornucopia of possibilities that are untapped.
That's so true. I think yes, the things we want to hide are our strengths. If we can own them and not, you know, self-deprecate while we do those things, because then I think that's where probably other people's doubt creeps in about you, you know. She
Yeah.
seems so playful, but why is she so unsure about herself? Um, yeah, I think that's so true, and that's why often you know when a self tape or an audition is bland because you're trying not to show all those little sides of yourself that actually make a character more interesting. And I think when I was at drama school, you know, our school was big on transformative acting, and we did. I mean, anyway, I won't go into detail, but that was kind of like the epitome for me, being something very different and thinking that I couldn't put any of myself in it, but that was misguided, and I wasn't necessarily being taught that, but I was telling myself that I can't use all of those
Mm.
things that I can access really easily, even if they're right for the character. And now I know it's like, oh no, definitely use that first if you can, because you're it's just so much more easily accessible.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do the rapid fire. I'm going to say what makes you, and then I'll
Okay.
say a word, and then you say what comes to mind. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Mhm.
What makes you hungry?
Pasta, pizza, Chinese food, Thai food. I'll eat anything.
I
Food makes me hungry.
What makes you sad?
Oh, loneliness. Yeah.
What inspires you?
A good book, nature. I think stand-up comedians are pretty inspiring. New parents, I've had a lot of friends who have children. I think that's pretty inspiring.
What frustrates you?
When friends disappoint you, that could be frustrating.
What makes you laugh?
One of the things that really makes me laugh is a podcast called Three Girls, One Keith. It's Amy Schumer's podcast. It is my comfort place. Listening to other people laugh
Mm.
is really enjoyable.
And finally, what makes you grateful?
I think I feel most grateful with family and friends. Again, it just comes back to connection. I think that's when I feel most blissed out is when I'm with really good company who I can be myself around.
Yeah. No, fair enough. What are the top 3 things that have happened so far today?
Wow. Okay. I had a lovely phone call with a friend of mine in the UK. So that was nice. And I had a walk while I did that. And I was working on a self-tape this morning. And because it's not in my natural accent, there's a lot of repetition and going through sound. So I was doing a lot of that this morning. Oh, and I chatted to my mum.
What is something that you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to warmer weather, although I very much enjoy the cold, but the winters in Toronto are longer than I'm used to. More time physically spent with friends and family, and more physical activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roller skating, right?
Exactly. I'm ready to get my skates on.
Anna, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such fun.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really lovely.
I've been speaking today with Anna Tierney. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. And remember to live in the moment. In music, stop time is that beautiful moment where the band is suspended in rhythmic unison, supporting the soloist to express their individuality. In the moment, I encourage you to take that time and create your own rhythm. Until next time, I'm Lisa Hopkins. Thanks for listening.